863 suddenly becomes violent and attempts to break his restraints. Director Mandeville activates the shock collar. You! I'll kill you! You're the pervert! Hello everybody, I'm TheRubber. Today, we bring you SCP Foundation Keter Class Object SCP-1788. SCP-1788, also known as The Adults, is a process, treatment, or other means of biological transformation. A prepubescent human being subjected to 1788 will become an instance of SCP-1788-1. On reaching adulthood, 178-1s will display a predatory behavior towards prepubescent humans. Typically, they will settle in a large urban center. There, they will take on a form of white-collar employment and begin tracking prepubescents in the area. However, they will usually not seek employment in a job where they would work directly with children. Presumably, this is to limit suspicion. Approximately once every 6 months, a 1788-1 instance will attempt to abduct one of the subjects that it has been tracking. Once captured, it takes them to a remote or otherwise unobserved location, where it is subjected to the 1788 process and turned into an instance of 1788-1. Little information has been gathered from captured instances of 1788-1. These 1788-1 instances are of above-average intelligence and show extremely strong resistance to compulsion, coercion, torture, and other forms of information extraction. More detailed observations are difficult to make, as instances refuse to take standardized exams. In addition, they become aggressive and uncooperative when forced to answer questions, demonstrating an unwillingness or inability to comply with tests. To date, every instance has also shown signs of malignant narcissism and psychopathy. They generally demonstrate a complete lack of empathy, while also showing keen psychological insight. For these reasons, among others, unauthorized contact with 1788-1 instances is strictly forbidden. Individual instances generally do not voluntarily gather or interact with one another, except for the purposes of mating. In fact, when 2 or more instances are placed in the same environment, they typically fight for dominance. This behavior is not gender-linked, in that females and males will fight one another in addition to their own genders. In a mixed gender group, there will be only one dominant individual, who may be male or female. Captured instances are housed separately to minimize damage. Multiple instances have been seen in the same general urban area, but never in a ratio greater than 1 to 100,000 normal humans. Their gestation period is approximately 40 weeks, which is roughly the same as humans. Their offspring are genetically indistinguishable from normal humans and are not considered anomalous. However, as they are prime candidates for undergoing the SCP-1788 process, their capture or termination is to be considered high priority, second only to the termination of 1788-1 instances. According to the 1788-1 anatomy report, it is extremely difficult to distinguish a clothed 1788-1 from a normal adult human. Individuals show variation as expected from gender and ethnicity, but share certain characteristics in common. 1788-1 individuals appear to be obese, within the range of 150 to 200 kilograms when fully grown. 1788-1 instances have larger than average eyes, though not enough to appear abnormal on casual inspection. Their sweat contains high levels of potassium and copper, though still within the normal range for an adult human. While they seem normal on the outside, their internal anatomy has been altered extensively. 1788-1 instances' long bones and cranium have been reinforced with several heavy metals, and their muscle fibers have been interwoven with structures resembling carbon nanotubes. This gives them increased durability, strength, and speed that measures well above the human baseline. 1788-1 instances possess backup organs and systems for most of their body's vital processes. For example, they have a secondary heart, which is located lower in the torso. This heart can work in tandem with the primary heart to more efficiently circulate blood. Additionally, it can also function independently as necessary. Certain blood vessels have complex valve structures, allowing instances to close off blood flow to damaged limbs and other areas to prevent excessive blood loss. Other organ systems also have 2 or 3 redundant backups that can take over in the event of failure within a primary organ. 1788-1 instances also possess a secondary brain located in the upper torso and protected by its own skeletal structure similar in construction to the rib cage. Currently, the exact function of this brain is unknown, but it is known that this brain can continue to function even in the event of the destruction of the primary brain. This phenomenon was demonstrated in an incident where a team of agents were able to lure a 1788-1 instance into the range of a sniper, who was able to destroy most of the instance's head, including the entirety of the main brain. However, the instance still displayed full mobility and partial lethality, disabling 2 agents, 1 fatally, at close range. It is unknown how the instance was still able to sense the agents with most of its primary sense organs destroyed. Research is ongoing. The final difference in gross anatomy is the appearance of a second pair of arms, located directly below the main pair. These have apparently equal strength and dexterity to the upper pair, and 1788-1 instances are apparently capable of using all 4 arms simultaneously. When not actively hunting, instances hold the lower pair folded closely to their sides, where they are largely concealed by natural bulk. When hidden in this manner, it is virtually impossible to distinguish a clothed instance of 1788-1 from a normal, obese human, with the only exception being upon close inspection. Below is an interview log between Site Director Mandeville and SCP-1788-1-863. The 863 was restrained and fitted with an electroshock collar for this interview. Please state your name for the record. I don't need a name. Names are for children. The driver's license and other materials on your person identify you as… Is that your name? That's my childhood name. I don't need it now. Then I'll refer to you as 863. Call me what you like. Just don't call me late for supper. You were found by our agents outside an elementary school, and documents in your car and apartment include multiple photographs of the victim, taken without their knowledge. Are you a pedophile, 863? 863 suddenly becomes violent and attempts to break his restraints. You, I'll kill you. You're the pervert, you. If you're not 863, then why are you observing human? 863 stops, attempting to break restraints. You think they're the victim. I can't believe we came from you. Explain what you mean by that, 863. 863 does not speak. Director Mandeville activates the shock collar. 863 does not visibly react. That's what I mean. You think you can hurt me with that? You're a failure, Doctor. You don't even know what you are. Would you care to elaborate, 863? You wonder why your scientists haven't found any anomalous implants in our bodies, why we have no surgical scars, why our genes are pure, unmodified human genes. Because we are human, Doctor. Your X-rays don't look very human. We don't look like you. We're not failures. We're not children. You regard us as children? You still look like children. You aren't finished. What do you… You're stunted. Incomplete. You're like the amphibian that grows up to breathe water instead of air. The eggs I watched, they must hatch into us. They need to be finished. So you abduct them to complete their metamorphosis? We don't need companionship. We don't live like you, in herds. Each one of us knows what we need to do, and each of us is capable of it. And what do you want us to do? Grow up or die. Containment of SCP-1788 is currently impossible, but the Foundation currently has 7 instances of 1788-1 imprisoned in Armed Biological Area 223. Contact with these instances is strictly forbidden outside of approved experiments. Each instance is to be housed in a separate humanoid containment cell. Any suspected instances of 1788-1 are to be reported immediately to Armed Biological Area 223 Command. Personnel are not to engage suspected instances and should retreat immediately upon an encounter. Heather was feeling uneasy. It was supposed to be a lively party, but her friends have been disappearing one by one as the party went on. None of them had any idea where the others had gone to. As she walked back into the living room, all her friends were now present, except that they were all dead. Their throats slashed, bodies bleeding heavily. A man in black overalls with his face covered in dirty burlap sack suddenly appeared at the other side of the room. Heather wanted to scream, but she knew that if she did, she would end up like her friends. Hello everybody, I'm TheRubber. Today, we bring you a SCP Foundation Safe Class Object, SCP-1733. SCP-1733, also known as Knife, Scream, Cut to Black, is a VHS tape containing a recording of the horror movie Return of the Suburb Slasher, which, according to the case, produced by Crystal Elms Productions in 1983. The plot follows protagonist Heather Campbell preparing to host a party at her family's residence whilst her parents are away. During the party, a Suburb Slasher, henceforth SCP-5733-1, appears in the area and proceeds to stalk and murder all 5 of her friends whom Heather has invited over, and a police officer who was on his routine patrol. 5733-1 wears a black burlap sack over his face and a black overalls. He doesn't speak at any point of the movie's duration. 5733's anomalous properties will manifest at the 97th minute of the movie's runtime. At the 95th minute, Heather discovers her friends' corpses staged in her living room. 5733-1 appears at the other side of the room and begins to chase Heather. She runs into the house basement and locks the door behind her. Once in the basement, Heather then turns to the camera and begins to plead for the viewer's help. Following this, viewer of 5733 can directly talk to Heather, henceforth designated as SCP-5733-2, and advises her on how to escape from 5733-1. The course of the movie then depends on the conversations held with 5733-2. However, 5733-2 will only converse with the viewer about topics regarding her escape. If the viewer ignores her or attempts to talk to her about topics other than her escape, she will walk back up the stairs in a resigned manner and open the door. 5733-1 will be waiting directly outside the door. The movie will then cut to black and the tape ejects itself from the machine. Tests were carried out by the Foundation to help 5733-2 to survive. Initially, basic tests were done by having D-Class personnel to be the viewer and to instruct her. The first 2 tests were conducted with the goal of having 5733-2 to either escape or kill 5733-1. However, both options failed. When she escaped in a car, 5733-1 appeared from the back seat. When she tried to shoot him with her father's shotgun, the gun wasn't loaded. Both scenarios ended in the same fashion. 5733-1 brandishes a kitchen knife. 5733-2 screams, and the tape cut to black. Since the protagonist couldn't escape or deal with the slasher alone, another test was conducted. This time, 5733-2 was instructed to go from house to house to find neighbors who could aid her. Unfortunately, as she made it to the next door, she discovered that her neighbor, Mr. Loomis's throat had been slashed open, lying lifelessly on his bed. A figure covered in a blanket got up next to the body. It was revealed to be 5733-1. Upon seeing the kitchen knife, 5733-2 screamed and the tape cut to black. If her neighbor couldn't help, what about the Foundation? 5733-2 was given a covert Foundation phone number in operation in the year 1983 and was told to reach her phone and dial it. To no avail, the phone was destroyed, and a note, written in what appeared to be blood, had been impaled into the phone with a kitchen knife. On the note, it said, "The only Foundation here is fear." Immediately, 5733-1 appeared behind 5733-2 and brandished another kitchen knife. She turned around and screamed. The tape cut to black. Next, 2 agents were assigned to teach her fighting techniques. 5733-2 emerged from the basement and made her way to the house front door, where she was confronted by 5733-1. Using the combat techniques the agent had taught her, she successfully knocked 5733-1 to the floor. She then picked up a candlestick from the dining room table and prepared to attack him. Before she could finish him off, another instance of 5733-1 leaped at her from behind, and the tape cut to black seconds before contact was made. The Foundation then thought perhaps bending the genre of the movie might work, and so the Foundation assigned an expert in thaumaturgy to teach 5733-2 offensive and defensive spells against 5733-1. At first, she succeeded in fending off 5733-1's knife using a protective ward and pushing him away with a wind spell. However, as she attempted to run away, 5733-1 casted a freeze spell on her. 5733-2 tried to scream, but she couldn't. As 5733-1 was about to stab her, the tape cut to black. After the test, it was reported that certain psychological trauma was experienced by the subjects after viewing 5733, as well as heightened anxiety whenever the protagonist is facing off the slasher. The lead researcher, Dr. Carpenter, then decided to conduct a final test, with himself as the viewer. Following his instructions, as 5733-2 successfully cleared the vicinity of her residence, as she ran down the street, she heard a noise coming from her house. She turned around and saw 5733-1 had busted out of the door of her house, but he only stood there. She ran for 20 minutes and stopped to take a breath. By that point, she noticed that both sides of the road were surrounded by nothing but darkness. She was instructed to continue walking, and eventually she saw lights up ahead. Rejoiced, she rushed forward and shouted for help. When she arrived, her heart sank as her steps slowed down. She recognized that place. It was the same area where she lives. 5733-1 was still at her door. He walked towards her. As 5733-1 brandished his knife, Dr. Carpenter immediately yelled at her to attack his face, which she did so after dodging his slash, ripping the burlap sack covering 5733-1's face. Dr. Carpenter then instructed her to stab 5733-1's legs, which crippled his movement. As Dr. Carpenter gave his next instruction, he suddenly felt anxious and had a feeling that 5733-1 would dodge the next action. Dr. Carpenter said, "Heather, kill him." 5733-2 rushed forward with both hands gripping the shears in an attempt to push it against 5733-1's heart. Dr. Carpenter didn't instruct her on how to kill 5733-1, as he had simply told her to kill him. Yet, she had done exactly what Dr. Carpenter had in mind, and 5733-1 managed to dodge her attack just as well. 5733-1 grabbed the shears from her and pushed her to the ground. Dr. Carpenter realized what those reports of anxiety were about. 5733 will read their minds and use the information against their desired outcome. As the camera tilted up from the ground to 5733-1's face, Dr. Carpenter approaches the television screen, staring at 5733-1. With the sack damaged, his face can be seen, staring straight at the camera. 5733-1 looks exactly the same to Dr. Carpenter. Shocked, Dr. Carpenter slowly moved away from the screen, and the camera zoomed out as if mimicking his movement. 5733-1 moved towards 5733-2 with the shears held above him. She screamed, and before the shears made contact, the tape cut to. Suddenly, SCP-3199 jumped right at one of the personnel. They barely had time to react before it escaped from the corridor. They fired off enough rounds to blow a chunk out of its chest. 3199 let out the most awful scream. Hello everybody, I'm TheRubber. Today, we bring you SCP Foundation Keter Class Object SCP-3199. SCP-3199, also known as human, is a sentient humanoid species of a currently unknown biological origin. though tissue samples suggest traces of domestic chicken and chimpanzee DNA. 3199 is hairless, stained with a thin layer of albumin, and stand at an average of 2.9 meters. A matured 3199 weighs around 780 kilograms, and a hatchling weighs at 360 kilograms. The necks of 3199 appear dislocated and are capable of twisting approximately 340 degrees, presumably due to the nature of 3199's reproductive cycle. SCP-3199 is an opportunistic hunter, engaging with live subjects within a radius of 0.6 kilometers surrounding hatchlings that have not yet reached full adolescence. Its average speed is recorded at 25 kilometers per hour. Upon contact with human or animal subjects, 3199 will kill them, liquefying their internal organs and bone structure. The cadaver is then given to the young and utilized as a form of nourishment. Instances of 3199 have been observed producing large eggs of an off-white coloration and rubbery appearance. These eggs will pass through its stomach, esophagus, and eventually extract via the mouth, followed by a highly corrosive red substance. SCP-3199 shows extreme distress throughout the entire process, with SCP's personnel describing the sound as not dissimilar to a scream. Presumably, due to a biologically ingrained method of avoiding extinction, SCP-3199 will always produce its eggs to fill all available space. This anomalous property currently has no known limit, and as a result may pose an LK-class species transmutation scenario. Termination of 3199 can be performed with relative ease. However, a complete eradication is currently difficult, as all instances of 3199, regardless of age, will always carry one egg inside their stomach to ensure survival for at least one member of their species at all times. The eggs from 3199 have proven to be extremely resilient. Experiments shows the egg sample lacking visible signs of damage after subjection to extreme blunt force trauma, extensive pressure exceeding 180,000 psi, high precision blades, and even long-term acid exposure. Use of point-blank explosives was suggested, but never tested, because heat exposure has been determined to accelerate hatch rates, and thus detonation may run the risk of a containment breach. During the intense heat exposure experiment, an egg sample from 3199 was secured in a containment cell that gradually increased its temperature at an average rate of 7 degrees Celsius per minute. After approximately 9 minutes, the egg ruptured violently and produced a single hatchling. On-site personnel reacted swiftly, trying to recontain the newborn instance. However, the excessive internal temperature impacted the physical growth of the young instance, and it reached adolescence at an accelerated rate of 40 seconds. As a result, it produced 2 further instances of 3199. On-site security response was swift, and all 3 instances were detained. All future heat testing involving 3199 egg samples has been forbidden until further notice. In the liquid nitrogen bath experiment, an egg sample was submerged entirely in liquid nitrogen. After approximately 45 minutes of exposure, SCP-3199 had reached -190 degrees Celsius. Following 2 hours of exposure, the egg sample was removed and placed under extreme pressure. As a result, hydraulic press peaked at pressures of around 9,000 psi. Cracks appeared 30 minutes into exposure, before the sample shattered. Egg fragments were collected and furthermore pressed into a fine pulp. 0 traces of albumin or yolk were located. Incineration of these remains proved successful at destroying the egg in its entirety. SCP-3199 was discovered in Ireland after reports of an unidentified, bald creature crying like a banshee from within a dense woodland resulted in the dispatching of MTF Omega-19. MTF Omega-19 arrived around 2100 hours. They were told that if they could not catch 3199, the next best thing would be snapping a frame or 2. Then the Foundation hooked them up with the best night vision hardware. An hour later, they found a shack made from scrap metal and wood. It looked a lot like an oversized chicken coop. The team then entered the shack. Suddenly, SCP-3199 jumped right at one of the personnel. They barely had time to react before it escaped from the corridor. They fired off enough rounds to blow a chunk out of its chest. 3199 let out the most awful scream. Unfortunately, 2 personnel lost their lives during the action. Their internal organs and jaws were almost entirely dissolved. During transportation back to Site-114, 3199 produced 2 more offspring, resulting in the deaths of another 6 personnel. On 2017, the Foundation did a thorough sweep of 3199's initial recovery location. It was performed to uncover any further information regarding their origin. Locals claimed that the small remote residence in question has been established in the woods for several years. Surface Team D-029 managed to recover several items of interest, including 1 bag of assorted thread and needles, 3 chicken feather quills, 13 chicken carcasses with precise incisions located on the underbelly, neck, and thigh. Unbelievably, 6 of the carcasses had been plucked, with visible human teeth marks lining the bare areas seemingly at random. The team also recovered several containers, including water bottles and Tupperware boxes, holding an unidentified watery paste. The paste is deep brown in color, and when exposed to oxygen, it becomes viscous and hard. An A5 notebook, heavily scratched with human fingernails, was also found amongst the stuffs. The words, "Open when we are pure," are written on the front of the notebook. The notebook itself consisted of 24 pages of standard lined paper written in non-anomalous black ink. 19 of these pages consisted of various cuboid patterns and crude, childlike illustrations vaguely resembling SCP-3199. On the remaining 5 pages, large lines of writing detail the diary of an unnamed individual. Most of what was written was found totally illegible. However, 1 extract dated in 1973 was written with notably higher clarity, and quote, "If you're reading this, then lucky you. 1 millionth hour from not and it'll be fun. And the wonderful versatility of inferior human DNA will give birth to a new era. A stronger era. One where and food and water will be nothing but things of the past, as we make and make and make more for the better future. I really haven't much time. That's why I envy you so. You'll have all the time you need. Time will be on, and death will be life. New life changes lives and brings smiles like a freshness. New life will be a part of life from now on." The final page consisted of several ink blots, 13 instances of the word life in various sizes, and 2 instances of the words, "Didn't you want this?" SCP-3199 was issued Keter classification on June 10th of 2017, following the events of a containment breach. After the breaching incident, SCP-3199's original water containment method was disassembled and replaced with the current resin solution. Besides, Protocol 34-22-B poached will be carried out during the event of a breach. The following steps are the procedure of this protocol. On-site personnel with Level 1 security clearance or above initiate standard lockdown procedure and immediately move to Site-113 unless instructed otherwise. Site-114 is to be filled entirely with distilled water, treated with Class A sedatives. Then, Surface Team Tango 306-A will be notified and dispatched and instructed to retrieve any instances of SCP-3199's eggs. Any living instances of 3199 will be terminated on site, and their remaining eggs will be collected. All egg samples are to be transported to temporary off-site containment. Site-114 will then be drained, and janitorial staff dispatched to thoroughly clean the area. Any personnel attempting to breach Site-114 before this inspection is complete will be apprehended and suspended accordingly. Some personnel have displayed skepticism regarding the necessity of this protocol. However, Dr. Watt believes that fluid is an excellent counter to 3199's anomalous reproductive properties. It appears to enter an inert state in the presence of liquid, regardless of thickness or clarity. There are 2 theories regarding this occurrence. First, SCP-3199's need for survival demands all of its attention to focus on not drowning. Second, SCP-3199 considers the liquid around it as full space, and as a result does not produce any egg when submerged.